Have you ever been told you smell bad? Perhaps someone once suggested you use deodorant, or hinted, not so subtly, that you needed to freshen up. For Adora, this wasn't an occasional embarrassment, it was a constant curse. Adora, you stink. Adora, try and bathe properly. Adora, wash under there. Adora, you're a shame to womanhood. The insults followed her like a shadow, echoing through her days and nights. Adora's life was far from perfect. A pungent odor clung to her, strong and offensive, the kind that made even strangers wrinkle their noses and turn away. The whispers, the stares, and the open mockery weren't just hurtful, they were relentless. Everyone assumed the source of the smell was intimate, a suggestion that magnified her humiliation. The odor was so overwhelming that even the kindest people couldn't suppress their disgust. It was as though her very existence had become an affront to those around her. Her self-esteem shattered like glass underfoot. She avoided eye contact with anyone, even strangers on the street. At school, Adora arrived earlier than anyone else, hoping to mask herself with a cloud of perfume. 5 different bottles every morning, yet it made no difference. When her classmates arrived, they refused to sit near her, each casting resentful, accusing glances. Though she often secured the back seat to avoid attention, their jeers always found her. Akuna, they would call her, a name that meant rotten. Adora the misfit, they sneered, voices laced with malice. In the classroom, she couldn't focus. Her mind was weighed down by the endless humiliation. Head pressed against her desk, she cried silently, while the room echoed with laughter at her expense. But nothing cut deeper than the betrayal of her sister, Chidima. Rather than defend Adora, Chidima joined the crowd, mocking her mercilessly and in public, pretending not to know her. Each day, Adora walked home alone, tears streaming down her face. Her parents, who adored her, tried everything they could to help. They were wealthy and spared no expense, taking her to the best hospitals in the city. Yet every doctor came back with the same response. There was nothing physically wrong with her. It hadn't always been this way. Adora was once the pride of her school. Her beauty was captivating, her intelligence unmatched. She was always top of her class, admired by students and teachers alike. But that life felt like a distant dream, swallowed whole by the nightmare her existence had become. Once upon a time, in the bustling heart of Lagos, there lived a humble couple named Mr. Chris and Mrs. Cynthia. They had 2 lovely daughters, Chidima and Adora. Chidima was the elder sister, with 2 years between her and Adora. While Chidima often preferred lounging around and watching movies, Adora was a diligent helper, always eager to assist with household chores without being asked. This difference in their personalities led their parents to rely more on Adora. They would often send her on errands and tasks, and she would happily oblige. As time passed, Adora grew closer to her parent while Chidima remained aloof, choosing instead to escape into the screen of her favorite shows. Despite their efforts to be fair, showering both daughters with gifts and attention, Chidima couldn't help but feel overlooked. She watched as Adora engaged in warm conversations with their parents, laughing and sharing moments that felt distant from her own experience. Chidima's resentment grew. Jealousy crept into her heart. This strain transformed her into a shadow of bitterness, causing friction not only with her sister but also within herself. Chidima's feelings boiled over in unpleasant ways. She would frown during family picture sessions and protested whenever their parents brought matching outfits for both girls. During arguments, her anger would sometimes erupt dangerously, even leading her to hurt Adora when she burned her hand with a hot iron while she slept. Yet Adora, with her gentle spirit, bore no ill will toward her sister. She continued to care for Chidima, trying to bridge the emotional gap between them, hugging her during tough moments and smiling in family photos. Despite Adora's attempts to bond, the rift only seemed to widen. Chidima's thoughts often drifted toward friends rather than her sister. This continued until they entered senior secondary school together. By then, Adora had blossomed into an exceptionally intelligent and attractive young woman, drawing admiration from both peers and teachers. She basked in the attention, becoming the envy of Chidima, who felt even more out of place. In class, teachers would often praise Adora, urging her classmates to look up to her as a role model. The encouragement and admiration Adora received deepened Chidima's feelings of inadequacy and jealousy. It became increasingly apparent that while they attended the same school, they seemed like two strangers living under the same roof. As the school year unfolded, the tension continued to build, and the dynamics of their relationship grew ever more complex. One Monday morning at school, an air of excitement filled the assembly hall. The principal climbed onto the podium, ready to introduce a new student. "Let's give a warm welcome to Andy, our newest student," he announced. As the name echoed, heads turned, and a chorus of whispers erupted among the girls. "Wow, he's so handsome," they gasped, their eyes fixed on the tall, dark, and charming boy standing at the front. The whispers grew louder, prompting the principal to intervene, asking for silence. For Chidima, sitting next to Andy in class, the moment felt electric. She found herself staring at him, longing for eye contact, which he granted in the form of warm smiles. In her mind, she spun fantasies of having Andy, the school heartthrob, fall for her. She thought perhaps this would draw attention away from Adora, who was always in the spotlight. However, as days went by, it became all too clear that Andy was more drawn to Adora. He would often sit with her and engage in conversations that showcased her intelligence and beauty. Chidima watched in frustration as their connection blossomed, while she felt invisible, simmering with rage and jealousy. One fateful day, overwhelmed by her emotions, Chidima confronted Adora in a fit of fury. With a kitchen knife clutched tightly in her hand, she threatened, "If you know what's best for you, stay away from Andy. You've already taken everything else from me. I won't let you take him too." Tears streamed down her face, each drop heavy with all her pent-up feelings. Adora's heart sank at Chidima's words. She had never realized her sister felt this way. "Sis, I'm so sorry," she replied gently, taken aback. "I never knew you felt this way about me. I thought your indifference was just how you were, nothing to do with me. Please, stop crying. If you want, I'll stay away from Andy. I want us to be close, just the two of us. We should support each other and not fight." Chidima's tears began to fade as she processed Adora's kind response. The prospect of rekindling their sisterly bond excited her. They agreed to walk to school together the next day, and for the first time in a long while, Adora felt genuinely happy. Deep inside, she had always yearned to be closer to Chidima. However, when they reached school, Andy approached Adora to say hello. But Adora's silence spoke volumes. She turned away, not wanting to jeopardize the fragile connection she was nurturing with Chidima. Chidima, eager to get Andy's attention, greeted him enthusiastically, trying to fill the silence. "Hey Andy, how are you?" she chirped, pleased that he was engaging with her. Andy, however, couldn't shake the feeling that Adora was avoiding him, which only heightened his interest in her. Every attempt Chidima made to get his attention seemed to backfire, and each moment of Adora's indifference seemed to draw Andy in further, igniting Chidima's frustration. During break time, drama unfolded in the cafeteria. Andy approached them again. Adora continued her silent treatment, determined to focus on her sister. Chidima, unable to restrain herself any longer, shouted at Andy, "Leave her alone. Isn't it obvious she doesn't like you? I love you, Andy. Just give me a chance to show you." At that moment, Andy snapped, "Leave me alone, Chidima. I don't like you. The reason your sister is ignoring me is because of you." His voice rang through the cafeteria, drawing a crowd of curious students. Chidima's face flushed with humiliation as tears streamed down, and she fled the school, unable to bear the weight of the shame. Outside, her mind raced with chaotic thoughts. This was not how she had envisioned her life. She felt trapped in a cycle of jealousy and bitterness, consumed by the idea that Adora had taken everything from her. Desperate for a way out, she boarded the next bus to Makoko village, home to a strong and mysterious native doctor whom no one dared to name. It was time, she thought, to teach her sister a lesson that she would never forget. Chidima arrived at Makoko village, her heart heavy with desperation. As she walked through the narrow, winding paths, she approached several villagers inquiring about the elusive native doctor named Abaku. Most of the villagers cast resentful, wary glances her way, as if her very presence offended them. But Chidima pressed on. Finally, she spotted an elderly woman sitting on the porch of a small hut. "Good day, Mama," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. "I'm looking for Abaku, the native doctor." The old woman's eyes widened with disbelief. "My daughter, the path you seek is a dangerous one. Many who have sought him live to regret it. Don't let evil blind your eyes to the dangers that lie ahead," she warned, concern etched across her face. Chidima, feeling the weight of her frustration, replied angrily, "Are you going to show me the way or not? I don't need you lecturing me." Tears brimmed in her eyes, spilling over as her pent-up anger erupted. "Okay, my child," the old woman relented. "To find Abaku, you must journey to the end of the Makoko River. There, you will see a kola nut tree. Plug the fruit and take a bite, then call Abaku's name 3 times. "Thank you, Mama," Chidima said, handing the woman some money as she wiped away her tears. As she departed, the old woman shook her head, pity flooding her heart for the young girl who seemed so lost. After hours of searching, Chidima finally arrived at the end of the river late that night. The moon cast eerie shadows on the path as she approached the kola nut tree, following the instructions given by the old woman. With a quick motion, she plucked a kola nut from the tree, bit into it, and called out, "Abaku! Abaku! Abaku!" In an instant, the world around her spun and darkness enveloped her. When her vision cleared, she found herself in a different village, sunlight pouring down. Confused but determined, she asked the first person she encountered about Abaku. They pointed her in the direction of his hut. As she stepped inside Abaku's dwelling, a collection of macabre items greeted her. A myriad of skulls adorned the walls, including those that made her blood run cold. Ignoring her fear, she continued deeper into the hut until she found Abaku seated inside, his presence commanding yet unsettling. "Remove your shoes," he barked, his voice echoing off the walls. "It is forbidden to enter my shrine with shoes." "I'm sorry, sir," Chidima replied, a shiver of fear coursing through her as she complied, hastily removing her shoes. Abaku studied her intently, a wicked grin spreading on his face. "I know why you're here. Do you wish your sister dead, or do you want to make her suffer?" Chidima hesitated, her heart pounding. "I want her to suffer," she finally admitted, tears of vengeance shining in her eyes. "I want everyone to hate her." With a calculated nod, Abaku reached for a small black voodoo doll resting on a monkey statue. "Take this. When you return home, place the doll between her pillows. I assure you, she will become the most hated person in your school." "Thank you, Baba," Chidima said, accepting the doll with trembling hands and handing over some money. Meanwhile, at home, 2 agonizing days had passed since Chidima had gone missing, and Adora was frantic with worry. She couldn't bring herself to tell their parents, who were away on a business trip, that Chidima's disappearance was due to her. As panic rose within her, she decided to report her sister's absence to the police station. She posted flyers around town, frantically searching for any clues, her heart heavy with the guilt of knowing that her sister was struggling perhaps because of her. Adora hadn't eaten a proper meal during this time. She was a shell of her former self, lost in despair. However, when the news of Chidima's disappearance reached Andy, he was moved to volunteer to help Adora search. Feeling a sense of responsibility for how he had spoken to Chidima before she vanished, he joined Adora in her efforts, hoping to assist in any way he could. Late that night, just as Adora was beginning to lose all hope, Chidima returned home. The moment Adora saw her sister, she rushed forward, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere for you." "I was worried sick," she cried, tears streaming down her face. Chidima merely frowned, her expression icy. "I'm home now. That's what's important," she replied dismissively. Relieved but a bit hurt by her sister's tone, Adora went to the kitchen to prepare some noodles, hoping to coax Chidima out of her shell. While Adora cooked, Chidima seized the opportunity to sneak into her sister's room. With a sense of urgency, she quickly hid the voodoo doll inside the pillow, sewing it back to keep her secret safe. After a short while, Adora called out, inviting Chidima to eat. "Come on, I know you're still angry, but I told Andy to leave me alone. Please don't let a boy come between us," she pleaded. After some coaxing, Chidima reluctantly joined her and ate the noodles. All the while, a sinister gleam of anticipation sparkled in her eyes. That night, as Adora drifted off to sleep, a creepy, dirty demon emerged from the pillow, its presence heavy and foreboding. The next morning, Adora woke up feeling strangely off. She dressed for school, calling for Chidima to join her. But as soon as her sister walked into the sitting room, she was hit with an unbearable stench that soured her stomach. "What is that smell?" Chidima cried, her eyes widening in disgust. "What smell?" Adora replied, perplexed. She couldn't smell a thing. They left for school together, Chidima trailing behind, excitement bubbling in her chest. The smell was coming from her sister, and she couldn't wait to see the fallout, especially in Andy's reaction. "Adora, you go ahead. I need to use the restroom," Chidima said, her heart racing at the thought of the chaos to come. As Adora stepped into the classroom, heads turned, but not in admiration. Students recoiled and began to cover their noses, whispers unraveling like threads of gossip in the air. Confused and embarrassed, Adora gazed around the room, trying to understand the commotion. When she realized the laughter and disdain were directed at her, her heart sunk. She couldn't fathom why her classmates were looking at her with such revulsion. That day was agonizing, as her friends turned against her, the whispers growing louder, the laughter sharper. Andy, too, seemed confused and disappointed, unsure why Adora had neglected her hygiene. He didn't approach her as he usually would. The next day didn't improve at all. By then, the scent had made Adora a social pariah. Students whispered and pointed, even reporting her to the teachers, who called her in for a meeting about her hygiene issues. Adora tried everything to combat the problem, bathing several times a day, applying expensive perfumes, even antibiotics, but nothing relieved the relentless odor. Doctors could find nothing wrong. Meanwhile, Chidima reveled in her sister's misfortune. She relished the whispers and the ridicule, even joining in to mock Adora. "Why does your sister smell so bad?" people would ask. "Oh, she does, but maybe it's just her natural scent," she would reply with a nonchalant shrug, feigning ignorance. One day in class, as Adora entered, the students erupted in chorus, wielding air fresheners and spraying it all around her. "What is wrong with you?" Chidima shouted at Adora, feeling the sting of embarrassment as Andy remained silent, though his disappointment was palpable. Adora, overwhelmed by shame, fainted, crashing to the ground. Andy rushed to her side, sprinkling water on her face. When she regained consciousness, she broke down in tears, devastated by her classmates' cruelty. Finally, Andy could stand it no longer. He stood up amidst the chaos, anger flashing in his eyes. "Shame on all of you for stooping this low. You've forgotten how Adora has been there for each of you. She's the most appreciated person in our school, and now you treat her like this?" His words hung heavy in the air, igniting a moment of shame among some students. As Adora lay on the classroom floor, embarrassment washed over her in waves. But when she saw Andy's concerned expression as he knelt beside her, something shifted in her heart. He gently squeezed her shoulder, his brow furrowed with genuine distress. "Adora, I'm so sorry," he murmured, his voice steady and sincere. "I didn't know it would get this bad. I promise I'll do everything I can to help you find a solution to this." Adora wiped her tears and nodded, grateful for his support. In that moment, amidst the ridiculing laughter of some classmates, she found solace in Andy's unwavering belief in her. The tide began to turn as other students, witnessing the unfolding scene and moved by Andy's kindness, began to rally around Adora. They whispered words of encouragement instead of derision, suggesting remedies and solutions that could help her cope. "Why don't you try a detox diet?" one friend proposed hopefully. "Or use this special soap I know. It changed my skin," another chimed in. But amidst the suggestions, Andy's voice emerged with a weighty urgency. "This is not just an ordinary problem." All eyes turned to him, intrigued. "This isn't merely about hygiene. I believe it's spiritual. We have to handle it in a spiritual way." "What do you mean?" Ogum asked, confused. "There's a night vigil organized by our fellowship at school," Andy continued, his conviction strong. "We could all join hands in fasting and prayer for Adora. This situation needs more than just remedies. We need to confront whatever malevolent force is in play." His words ignited a solidarity among the group. They nodded in agreement, murmuring their support. Even Chidima, who sat in the back, clenched her fists in quiet fury, her heart simmering with jealousy. How could they keep caring for Adora? How could Andy be dedicated to her after everything that had transpired? It's the prayer vigil day, and the group of Adora's classmates, including Chidima, stood around her. They invited a renowned pastor known for his fervent prayers to lead them. The atmosphere was thick with faith and hope, brightened by the glow of candles and the warmth of their unity. For hours they prayed, lifting Adora's name to the heavens. seeking divine intervention to break the chains of the spiritual attack she had been enduring. As the clock struck 2 a.m., the vigil finally came to a close. Exhausted but hopeful, Adora thanked her friends, feeling a renewed sense of strength. The prayers had transformed something dark within her, lighting a flicker of positivity she had long believed extinguished. She arrived home. Just as she was preparing to sleep, Chidima quietly entered her room. "Adora, you need to listen to me," Chidima said, her voice trembling. "Please, just don't sleep on that bed," Chidima insisted, stepping closer. "I have to tell you something important." Taking a deep breath, Chidima began to confess the treachery that had haunted her conscience. "I'm the reason for your strong body odor. I went to a native doctor and got a charm designed to hurt you. It's under your pillow." Adora felt her heart drop. "What? How could you do this to me?" she gasped, hurt and disbelief swirling within her. "You really hate me that much?" Chidima turned pale. "It's not hatred, Adora. I was jealous, and I thought it was the only way to get back at you, to make you feel what I felt." She walked to the bed, reached under the pillow, and pulled out the small, menacing black voodoo doll. "I'm so sorry," she begged, tears streaming down her face as she showed the doll to Adora. "I never meant for it to go this far. Please forgive me." Adora was stunned into silence, her heart struggling to process the betrayal. "Leave my room," she finally declared, her voice choked with emotion. "I can't believe you would do something so horrible. How could you be so cruel?" With that, she stormed out, leaving Chidima standing there, crushed. That night, as darkness cloaked the neighborhood, something compelled Adora to glance outside. To her shock, she saw Chidima walking out of their home, the voodoo doll clutched tightly in her hand. Adora felt a surge of dread rush through her. Without thinking, she bolted after her sister, her heart pounding like a drum. "Chidima, wait," she called, but her sister continued walking, oblivious, as if in a trance. Adora's instincts kicked in. She feared Chidima's intent and ran faster. Suddenly, Chidima reached the crest of the bridge, standing perilously close to the edge. Panic gripped Adora as she recognized the dangerous situation. "Chidima, don't!" she screamed, racing as fast as she could. She reached her sister just in time, gripping her arm firmly. "What are you doing?" Adora shrieked, breathless and terrified. Chidima's voice trembled. "Please, do you forgive me?" "Yes, I do. Please don't do this. Thank you for forgiving me. I want to end this suffering. Just let me go. I can't be saved." "No, please don't do this. It's just the two of us. Our parents need us. We can overcome this together," Adora pleaded, her heart aching with love and desperation. She held Chidima tightly, fear coursing through her veins. "We can fix this. You are my sister, and I refuse to lose you." Tears cascaded down Chidima's cheeks. "Thanks for your forgiveness, Adora. I wish I could be a better sister. If I had my chance again, I would change everything." With each word, Adora's grip tightened. Just then, the sound of sirens wailed in the distance as their parents arrived on the scene. Panic and anxiety etched onto their faces, her tears mingling with the rain that had begun to fall. But Chidima pulled her hand from Adora's grip and fell into the water below. After 3 days, Chidima's body was recovered, even though Adora's condition disappeared, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of not being able to save her only sister. Sibling rivalry is very real, and it's a tool the devil uses to destroy homes and the world at large. Be wise and save your family while you still can.